don't like this, dude. I'm scared.
What, man?
I don't know what's going on right now.
I'm just getting cozy.
Yeah? I don't. You got, for audio people, he's got his headphones underneath his hood as they bulge out the side of the cloth.
Yeah, like Mickey Mouse.
He's got like a lapel thing going on with the zipper, just the way it was folded, reminding me of Strahd a little bit. What's on your shirt?
That is, I'm glad you asked, Braxton. This is a hunter from Bloodborne.
Oh, I can see now. He's got the
moon. That's the axe or something.
Saw.
And in the back, hang on, everybody. Sorry, audio listeners, tune into our YouTube channel, youtube.com, and look up the Dungeon Crawl Pod or Linktree. Look at this. Huh?
Oh, hold on, go. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Is that Maria?
Yeah, Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower, because she's cool.
You're clashing too. You got another graphic tee underneath your graphic hoodie, man.
Damn,
is that allowed? Is that allowed?
That's my whole wardrobe.
He's fashion. It really is. Actually, I haven't seen you wear your necklaces in a while.
I actually just wore them the other day. I went on a nice date with my girlfriend.
Yeah, you guys have been about town, dude.
Yeah. So yeah, we saw Jamie from the Dungeon Chronicles. She didn't.
Oh no, she saw you. No, you saw her.
I saw her. She didn't recognize. She didn't know it was me until I was already gone. She was in the zone, man. I didn't want to bother her. I tried to wave and say a couple things, but she was busy. And then we went to a nice picnic date. That was fun. Yeah, picnics are nice. It's a good way to
not too hot. I can't do those because the plants are out to get me.
Wasn't too hot. We had like a cold front up here because some couple storms have been coming by. It was a crazy rain today. It looked like there was hail, but it was just super hard rain.
Yeah, I'm a big wimp when it comes to anything that isn't like cultured 72 degrees and a half or something like that, and no humidity. I have weak constitution. We've talked about this before.
You're not from, but you spent a lot of time in Chicagoland.
Yeah, it's much better.
You didn't like the cold? Did you like the cold?
I love the cold, dude.
Yeah, okay.
Bring it with me.
Yeah,
but Denton's a good middle ground, except for the plants killing me sort of thing.
Yeah, you don't like pollen.
That's not fun. Does anybody like? Well, bees.
Yeah. That's
about it. That's all I can think of.
About it. Yeah.
Flowers. Other flowers.
Who likes mosquitoes except for maybe spiders and stuff?
I don't know, man. If I could, so to speak, turn the tables on them and then make them allergic to me, I'd probably do it. That could have gone in a really weird direction if you know about the anatomy of pollen, but I'm not going to go there. But speaking of turning tables, and by that I mean tabletop RPGs, and by that I mean flipping it around so that the DM is now a player.
Okay, I'm following.
And the segue has been stretching really long.
A lot of flipping.
Lately, I've been playing a lot of D&D.
Yeah, you've been consumed.
I've been consumed. So there's the live play with Dungeons and Dragons, twitch.tv. It's called the Dungeon Chronicles.
There you go.
But it's on the Dungeon Crawl Network on Twitch.
Yeah, which you guys can watch next Monday.
Yeah, you took that from me.
Oh, sorry.
You made fun of me last time because I tend to say, "Oh, you can watch it yesterday."
Yeah.
Because happens every other Monday.
Take it now. Okay, so wait, Braxton, when can I watch?
It's done.
I'm really curious. Hey, I love the Dungeon Chronicles, but I've never done watch it live. When and where can I watch the next live production?
You can watch it on twitch.tv/ the Dungeon Crawl Network every other Monday. The next one coming up.
Twitch.tv/ Dungeon Crawl Network, everybody.
I'm sorry, I already messed it up. Dungeon Crawl Network.
If you ever forget,
the next Monday is the 17th.
Yeah, if you ever forget any of these, though, it's all in the link tree. So,
yeah,
easily accessible.
Easy. I think I mentioned it there somewhere at some point, somehow. But back to the point. Before we get moving forward, introductions are in order. He's Ryan.
He's Braxton.
Today on this lovely waffle cast, we decided, because we weren't sure what to do in between Ravenloft and coming up now, Ryan's been playing as a player a lot more lately. We've done a couple of one-shots with the people on our Discord. If you ever want to get in on those, jump in there, Linktree, blah, blah, blah. It's a fun experience. And we were thinking about topics to do. And I said, what if we asked you, and then conversely asked me, our thoughts on DMing and then turning into a player? Does it kind of turn the tables on how you run your games as a DM now that you've got this behind the scenes knowledge of like, when I do this, my players feel this because I felt this when I was a player.
Right.
And then for me, I've DM'd before, but this is the first time that it's been going on for this long. It's been a great experience, but I am like hyper aware about how things might be perceived by my players, to either my dismay or maybe it's a great boon. I don't know.
Or panicking for no reason. You know, that happens. Yeah.
That does happen. But the thing that came first, I think, was Ryan being a player. That is true. The egg could not have come first. Despite that. Well, yeah, what came first, the player or the DM?
They had to happen simultaneously.
Well, maybe the DM was already world building and they're like, now I need players. But then Gary Gygax came first, actually. It's a trick question. That's a good point. It's a trick question. So for you, I can't even remember now. What was the first time you were a player?
Ooh.
It's been a while. It was probably in my one shot.
I think it was.
It was a weird one. It was not a one shot. I didn't know which way to do it.
Or our friend Daniel's one shot. I can't recall.
I think mine came first.
Okay.
And it was probably due to a scheduling thing. I think one player was gone or you needed some time.
It was either that or was your campaign that fell apart. I can't remember which one. One of those two.
I'm pretty sure it's the one shot. That was no. Now time is getting all flipped up on me. I think it might have been my campaign.
It might have been because I remember I was like, "Hey, this is my first time playing." I think.
Yeah, and then when we did the one shot for our group of friends, I remember Daniel, our other friend, was like, "Oh, hey, this is really good," and he didn't know that it was like my first or second time DMing.
I think that sounds right.
Okay, so we figured it out. Do you remember what you played at all of those instances?
Yes. So the very first time, if anyone has been paying attention to our podcast episodes, know how much I love this class. I played a ranger for the very first time.
You had to see it, taste it, test it for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, because in my head, I want it to be good and I want to like it, but it's just, it's mediocre at best.
It is mediocre. Drake Warden's cool. At least at third level is what I've tested.
Yeah, well, that was not out at the time. Then the second, for yours, I was a paladin. And then for our friends, I think I was a cleric.
I think you were a cleric.
That I'm more wishy-washy on, but I'm pretty sure I was a cleric, and I was a paladin for yours. So I've kind of hopped around, and now I'm a cleric again for our live play.
So I don't know if there's a way for you to get this perspective, but when you are making your characters, how much of your DM brain interferes with it? Or is it really just you jump in and you're like, I'm a player, let's do this? It might be hard for you to judge because you don't have the pure player experience at all.
So from what I remember from my very first one, I remember I went pretty all out with it because I was excited, being a player. And what I like about being a DM is getting to see on my players' faces when I bring in their backstory or whenever I see my players interacting amongst themselves and pulling out their own character's backstory and talking to the other players about their backstory. It's fun and kind of rewarding to watch, as well as gives the DM gives me a moment to breathe and plan what's coming next. So I made sure for my character there were some ways that I could do that with other players, especially because I was coming into if we are going with your campaign as the one that I played first, I was coming into a game that already started. You guys had played like 1 or 2 sessions, I can't remember.
Yeah, I think we had 1.
And you were like, "Hey, how about you come in?" I was like, "Hey, sure, that'd be fun." So I came in. I was a ranger, and I remember the way my character was. It was like he likes poetry or something like that, and I have a document still saved of all the poetry that I had saved, and if a moment came up, I was going to recite the poem and whip it out. I think I maybe said 1 or 2 poems during that.
It's kind of Ormano 1.0, honestly.
It is
in a bit.
I don't know. I'm not going to say the rest of how that character was, but if you recall, even some of that is also in Ormano and some semblances.
He's a little dark and he's got very clear mechanics and things he interacts with.
Yeah.
I'm just now starting to realize this, and the voice might have been similar, but I'm not too sure. It was a fun experience.
It's funny. I didn't really recall that until just now, but yeah, it's very similar. I think I just really wanted to play a character like that, and now I'm able to finally flesh him out more and kind of continue along with it. So I think that's what came with it most by becoming a player, was thinking about how can I give the DM something, let them bounce off of stuff, but also give the players something to interact with. Like I remember with that character, at the very least, I had like a doll or something I carried with me as well that I talked to occasionally. And I remember people were like, "What the hell is this guy doing with a doll? It's kind of weird."
is very weird.
But it gives
good role playing.
Yeah, it gives some mystery and some stuff to bounce off. And I've never been in a campaign that lasted long enough to where those secrets and stuff are understood by everybody. So I'm not entirely sure how that'll be once everyone knows the quirks and everything. Like we've gone for like 10, 15
That's
levels.
When you add
or whatever.
more secrets. It's like an onion.
Yeah, that's when you just keep adding things, adding layers on top of it. So I don't know. I guess that's how my DM brain went into it. It's just planning things for people to mess around with and interact with.
Yeah. So the next thing I'm curious about, because I deal with this all the time, and it especially happened in the one shot that I did the other day, is you specifically, you read a lot of source material, and you've probably read pretty much everything that's in the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide once or twice, or more times than that. Kenneth too. So did you have an issue with not metagaming or getting that info out of your brain, or were you able to ignore it?
It's a good question. No, I actually, from what I've noticed so far, I'm very good. I'm going to cast myself up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm at least able to separate DM brain from player brain, like out of player knowledge, because like there'll be times, at least in our one shots and stuff, or when you were very early DMing, that like they did something wrong. The DM said something that's not exactly your rules as written, but the DM has the final say, and unless it's directly like affecting something my character can do, sure, why not? Let's go with it. Let's have fun. It's their call. So I won't ever speak up unless the DM specifically asks me a question. It's like, hey, is this correct? Tossing.
I like having you're not a rules lawyer. You're just rules aware. And I appreciate having you there, because I'd be like, let's flip through this, which is absolutely fine. Novice DMs don't ever feel bad about looking shit up, but just when I'm running a live show, I want it to go a little
or if you're stressed
faster.
DMs and you just want to say something on the spot and say, hey, I'll correct this later if this is wrong, as long as you're not directly harming what a player can do in the moment, then I think it's okay. So I'll do that a lot, and I think I'm able to then separate what my character knows with what I know. Like, for example, we had basilisks in the live play. A slight spoiler, I guess, but basilisks.
I think I've done that in every fucking campaign I've started.
I do
They're
remember
my goblins.
I do remember you mentioned basilisks that you brought up in one of your other campaigns you did. But basilisks are cool, but they have a very specific thing that if you look at them, you could possibly become petrified. And we heard of something with lots of statues. So obviously in my head, I'm thinking probably a basilisk or a Medusa, but we're probably a little too low level for that type of stuff. But in my head, my character's like, that sounds intriguing. I want to go check it out. So like, let's go see exactly what it is. And if we had the opportunity to look at one, I probably would have looked at one. Just, not even, metagaming wise, but just what my character would do. So I think it can be easy to get locked into all the stuff that but it's much more rewarding and interesting. And like, I'm completely okay with, I'm not the type of, I don't know what the right word is, but player that wants to succeed all the time. Like, for anybody who watches any role playing, like on Twitch or anything like that, there's certain players that only like role playing if they are doing like natural 20, succeeding on everything by a huge margin. Like they're living the best life possible.
Right.
I much prefer the type of role play where I'm either able to give it to somebody else or fail and have some cool encounter come out of that. So I'm okay with completely like failing rolls, dying, seeing what comes out of that type of role play. So I think that kind of plays into, if I know there's a basilisk, whatever, maybe I become petrified, or I'm almost petrified and someone else comes up and saves me. That could be really fun and cool. So
yeah, there's a convenient thing for me is that I got doo-doo brain sometimes and I forget a lot. Yeah. We were doing a one shot, I think. Ryan conducted his session that we usually do every Saturday. Every other Saturday. We like doing every other. You probably notice. It gives us more time to exist.
Yes.
But the D&D bug pulls me in, and I had woken up. I'm sorry, but it was like 5 p.m. and I woke up an hour before my session. It was a lit night before. I played a lot of Monster Hunter.
Okay.
We finished our session, and Jamie from the Dungeon Chronicles or somebody else in that group messaged me and says, hey, you want to do a one shot with us? And it's like 11 at night. And I'm like, is my entire day
just D&D
going to be just D&D? And I decided, I got in my car, which, guys, I have a car now.
God.
Woo!
That's crazy.
So I'm mobile. And you know how it is when you have a car, you just want to drive everywhere until you get sick of it. So I get my water, I come back, I make a character, and we play it. And it's the beginning of Curse of Strahd, and I'm aware of the monsters that show up and what happened, because Ryan ran that for me before. But we were doing this whole encounter, and my DM brain's like, okay, these are hags. I figured it out. Kenneth even called it earlier than everybody else, I think. I'm going to circle back to Kenneth because he's a big culprit in reading stuff. So I'm gonna pull him under the bus in a second. He's listening. He's probably going
about it. Yeah.
Me? That's Kenneth right now. So there's this revelation that this hag has probably had a kid with the man that we're trying to save his whole situation with. I don't know. Think of that, one of those first quests from The Witcher 3, the one with the white or something in a well.
Yes.
Something like that. Basically, his old wife died and was murdered, and it was probably because of this hag. This hag has a kid with him, and a whole sad situation. And then Kenneth's character in-game goes, or not in-game, Kenneth just flat out goes, wait a minute, can I make a check to see if my character realizes anything that happens with kids of hags out on their 13th birthday? And I'm like, that is so specific.
That's a very specific thing.
I'm like, but to be fair, he knows he does this, so he tends to play characters that are monster hunters.
Sure.
A bit.
As we talked about in our wizard class episode, very easy to bring in metagame stuff with wizards because they read a lot.
They read a lot, yes. So to Kenneth's merit, he tries to make sure he plays characters that would know this information. He rolls, can you just guess a number? What do you think you rolled on this?
Natural 20.
No, you got a 6. After all modifiers. And still relayed the information to us. He decided that was a good enough roll.
Wow.
After the DM had said that, he's like, well, my character probably know. And to be fair, again, his character probably would have known this.
Sure.
But, there's a couple of ways to deal with it that I'm going to say now is you can either forget like I do. You can be like Ryan and you're like, I know, but I'm still going to roleplay. Or you can be like Kenneth and you want to use that knowledge and you play a character that can use it in their checks without feeling like, in my case, I can never get rid of that information, and I'm going to in some way use it as a leg up. If it's a damage immunity, I'm going to try to push my character to figure out how to get to that point. Yeah, I wouldn't just outright say it, but
also rangers I think are also good for that kind of metagame stuff because you have your favorite enemy and your favorite enemy or location type stuff, so maybe know a little bit more of that information.
So my question for you is, if you had the chance to erase all of your DM sourcebook knowledge when you became a player, you get it back when you're not.
Okay.
Would you? Or do you think it enhances your game in some way?
I think your
player experience.
I think it does in some instances and also doesn't in others. I think for that, like for the Basilisk idea, I think it probably would be beneficial to not know about it. But I don't think that's necessarily harmed.
Well, there's so much Medusa stuff in pop culture and movies that we've just seen growing up that I think no matter the situation, you see frozen statue in a fantasy game, you're gonna.
I think it's no matter what, it'd be a red flag, right? But would my character know it's a red flag? Who knows? But I think in other ways, I think it has helped because, for example, we just did, speaking of one shots, we just did a one shot the other day. We talked about this last episode when I played an Illrigger and you played Drake Warden. But my girlfriend, first time playing ever, was involved as well.
Awesome.
And I was actually just talking about this with her the other day that I did this kind of subconsciously, probably because maybe either being a DM or maybe being a player for a couple times, but knowing that it's her first time, she's probably a little uncomfortable, still trying to get into the shoes. She was a cleric, so you got a whole bunch of spells to look at as well. Lot to kind of balance. And my character, but I probably would have done this anyway, was kind of not really good in social encounters, so I would bounce it over to other people. I'd send it in their direction. I'd say, hey,
it was really funny.
Yada yada, you take care of this or whatever. Let's try to give them some time in the spotlight. I've noticed I even that's how I started the session too. I was like, I immediately hopped into voice, into like a voice for my character, and started asking you guys questions, trying to pull everybody in. And I think if I wasn't a DM, I probably wouldn't be thinking about that type of stuff. At least personally, I'm sure there are like only players that will, good RPers that will do that as well.
Yeah. I learned that through being in a group of new players for the most part, except for I think one perhaps. But I ended up being the one who talked a lot. So I learned just kind of through that experience that, I want them to do things too.
Yeah,
so I would
toss the ball to them. Or like an R1 shot. I mean, obviously Braxton's an experienced player, but I'd even send things in his direction. I'd be like, hey, fly over there, do this, and give him options to take care of stuff.
Yeah, so bringing your player experience back to being a dungeon master, we touched on it a little bit just a moment ago, but after the first time you played, did things change at all when you started prepping as a DM? Or was it not like that huge of an influence?
I'd say in some ways. I think my DM has made more influencing on my being a player than vice versa. Probably just because I've been a DM longer. That I've now gotten pretty comfortable with how I prep and how I do things. I've been more inspired lately. Like I was working on a map. I haven't worked on maps. First of all, I haven't need to work on maps for a long time because my players been all in the same area.
We just got to a big city, and which the map is great, by the way.
Thank you.
It's super, super simple, but it's easy to follow.
Yes. I realized I might work on that more, but I started making maps for like kingdoms that are nearby that they could go to at some point. So if it ever comes down to it, I can like, hey, here's a map for this place. And I love making maps, but I just haven't done them in years. So it's super fun. I like getting into that kind of mindset. But I think my DMing has made more influencing on my player than vice versa. Because I don't think I've really changed how I prep things and how I do things. I think maybe at the very least, it's probably easier for me to think what my players are thinking in certain instances. Like if I was probably always able to read the room fairly well, but now it's easier to be like, this is probably how I would be thinking right now, or I can relate more to I don't really use counterspell, but for example, if I did counterspell someone I could relate to, oh my God, that sucks. Or you're a cleric and you get to cast one spell a turn and they save 3 turns in a row or
Action
something.
economy is king, man. It is the most
and it's painful.
Thing.
It can be painful if you feel like you're doing absolutely nothing. So I can at least relate to that and hopefully toss them a bone, outside of combat or later and give them something along those lines.
So it adds like a sense of empathy, I think is the word. Sympathy? Yeah. Empathy?
Empathy is better than sympathy, yeah.
I get confused on those, but generally I know empathy is emotional in a sense. So for me,
sympathy, this is the way I always think of it. I saw a comic a long time ago that was like, sympathy is, I understand, I hope you're doing well, and like someone's down in a well and stuck or whatever. And sympathy's like, man, I'm sorry you're stuck down there.
That sucks.
Yeah, I really feel for you. That sucks. And then empathy is, I'll climb down there with you and see what it's like. Actually being in there with them. I think that's how the comic went.
Great, now we're both stuck here.
I know we're both stuck, but hey, at least we both understand each other.
Oh, now we're both here, but you feel smart. Man, this sucks. Yeah, you're right. I feel the empathy.
Now I understand. Yeah, see, exactly. That's so sitting with them.
Jumping in that well, I suppose, of being a player, it's a great thing to do. The thing that sucks for me when I became a DM, and now from henceforth, as we continue to read all the official Woods of the Coast stuff,
yeah, now I can't bring in like stuff from that for you without you knowing what it is.
Yeah, that's the big danger, and I'll be fine with it. But for me, it sucks because I love that fresh experience. The one shot we did the other night, it might have been was it 2 days ago?
2 days.
I don't know.
Yeah,
my time
2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago. So he mentioned that it might turn into a Curse of Strahd campaign. And this isn't even a case of me being a DM before and knowing everything because I've read it. I've mentioned on this podcast many times Ryan has run the Curse of Strahd for me before I even really realized it was Curse of Strahd because he changed all the names, moved some stuff around. But me being me, I am bad at replaying things unless it just has an incredibly deep value for me, or like I love the game, like Nier Automata. I could play that probably infinitely. But for Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know if I could genuinely enjoy to the same level.
So it's the same story and stuff.
Yeah. There's some surprises too, and like we never really went through the Abbey. I don't think.
No, I cut out a lot of stuff, mainly for time, but also I wanted to keep the stuff that I liked the best, and just kind of streamline it.
So we went through a couple of key moments. So I know that I could do it without it being a big change. And this DM has mentioned, like, I'm going to move stuff around, change it, add some new things, because everybody at the table has either run or played in with those same people the Curse of Strahd before.
That's funny.
So, props to this guy who is running this for all of these pretty much veteran players who have all done this. Like, that's I wouldn't say it's hard because of that, because none of us are going to give this DM a hard time and say, well, you better knock it out of the park because, we've done this before. But that's the time when I think Dungeons and Dragons gets a bit weird, when everybody's been a DM and everybody's been a player. It changes stuff a bit.
Would you say for the better, for the worse?
It depends. It's like a tool. How do you use it? Like in your case, I think you spin it into a really positive thing because you use it to make more interesting player choices, and you're not afraid of picking the incorrect, from the point of view of min-maxing, option. I can't pull off Curse of Strahd spoilers from my brain, but like maybe you're this is a really weird example. Maybe you're an eye doctor. All right, you're a veterinarian eye doctor. And in the Dungeon Chronicles, there was kind of an injured basilisk. I won't get too much into spoilers, but maybe your first way to check if an animal's okay from their health is to look right in their eye holes. If Ryan was playing this character, he would probably still play it as, my guy's going to look at their eyeball and see if this animal's okay, make an animal handling check.
Probably poorly, but...
Yeah, and then Braxton goes, make a check to see if you get petrified or not in a couple of turns.
Huh? At least I have a couple saves,
Yeah. So in your case, I think you handle it well. But then there's a converse side of it, of you probably would have had more excitement or interest if you hadn't known it at all. So it's like, man, if I could unwatch that movie and watch it again, I'd do that infinite times.
It's also the opposite of, like, the inverse of metagaming, where let's say I know a troll has fire vulnerability. I will probably do
ice on it.
Well, I think I'll do the most in my brain. I'll probably overthink it and make sure I don't use fire because I don't want to metagame it. So I'll use everything else in my repertoire until, like, I'll just go down the list until I finally hit a fire spell, and that'll be the last thing I do. And at that point, it's either maybe too late, or is that role playing when I've exhausted all my other options? I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting conundrum.
The hope is that the DM would give the players plenty of opportunity to study or learn this through interactive combat or a quest or something they pick up on the ground. Or maybe somebody shoots fire at the guy because it's a sorcerer and that's what they do. And the DM's like, oh, that seemed to really hurt.
Really do something.
A lot. And you're like, maybe I should keep doing that. Stuff like that.
We mentioned Strahd too. I'd say... God, I'd say at least maybe 99% of players that go through Curse of Strahd know the general vampire vulnerabilities. But you kind of have to go in with an open mind. Granted, there are so many ways for you to learn about the vulnerabilities throughout the campaign. That's kind of the whole point, is that you get fed these...
Can Strahd walk into buildings when he's not offered to come in?
I don't know if it's specifically in the lore. But actually, no. I think, all vampires in D&D lore, as far as I believe, are under the have to be invited in kind of rule.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff
I don't think there's an
outside.
Instance in that campaign where that happens, but I did in my game. I had one of the NPCs invited him in without knowing it was him, because he charmed him. Because charming, the vampires can charm you from outside, and then
loophole.
Then you invite him in. But I don't remember where I was going with this. Oh, vampires. So there's lots of ways for the DM to kind of feed that to the players, allow them to use that kind of metagame and then now in-game knowledge, and kind of sync it up together. But I guess there's probably a possibility you don't meet this NPC to teach you this, or don't read this book, or don't find this item, and so then you got to kind of pretend that you don't know that vampires can't be outside in the daylight and can't get water on them, and you have to find their coffin and drive a stake. I mean, it's...
Yeah. So the DM player mutual experience thing is very much a conversation on metagaming.
Very much.
And it's the seal that exists for everybody when they begin, because you can never begin and be a player and a DM at the same time. Unless, like the same day you decide one person's going to DM and then the next person. But you still you got your first experience. Maybe you're the DM, maybe you're the player. And there's a willing choice. Like, you have to break your player or your DM virginity, so to speak. I guess it's a really bad way to say
I was thinking of it like the Wizard of Oz, where you get a peek behind the curtain. If you're a player first, then you become a DM, you kind of see how everything ticks, and you I feel like some of the magic in a way is lost if you're a player first and you realize, Now this is how it doesn't just happen. I have to create it all myself. I don't know. It's interesting to think about for sure.
Yeah, from my perspective, and kind of jumping into the player to the DM thing, that's what happened to me. When you're a player, most often than not, you're playing for yourself to have fun. You know, maybe you're a great person and you like your friends, you want them to have a good time too. Of course, like that aspect is very much there. But you're also playing so that you can have a fun time. So when you think of D&D as this time for me to have fun, and you become a DM and you write this world, it's often that your games might feel a bit more railroaded or bland for people that don't share the same interests as you. Again, that's where session 0 can come in, but that doesn't solve the issue of you're trying to have fun as a DM because you're DMing it. That's the player's aspect. Everything that has a player in it, video games, board games, is designed for that person. The DM is opposite. It goes outward. So I feel like when I first started writing worlds and whatnot, it was, I don't want to say self-serving, but it was very much about what am I into? What do I want to make this so that I can have a lot of fun? And then it became like, okay, these people are playing too, and I want to make sure that they have their backstories. And this is kind of coming full circle to what Ryan said. Players love learning about their backstories. So flipping that in, I think it's an easier transition player to DM. Not in the terms of workload.
True.
But I think it's easier to go from player to DM and figure out how to improve versus a DM to a player, because you just have intrinsic knowledge that exists and you have to learn how to deal with that.
I'd say it's with a similar kind of sense that if you're a player becoming a DM, maybe you were with a DM that wasn't that good, or you were with a really good DM and you want to emulate them or say, I don't want to be like that guy. When this guy did this to me, that was not fun. I'm not going to do it. It's like growing up, you know.
You've got your Matt Mercer DMs.
Yeah, but you see how your parents parent you. You're like, I'm not going to be that parent. But then most of the time, you kind of become that parent eventually. But
you become the monster.
Yeah. But I think that's a way can be either healthy but also bad. I mean, you mentioned the Matthew Mercer kind of effect where you see this godlike entity and you're and you're like, I want to be that guy. But I think it's good to aim for that. It's like that old poster that was in my 5th grade science teacher's class. Shoot for the moon and you'll land amongst the stars. If you miss, you'll land amongst the stars.
I just originally created that in my mind, but in a different way.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Wow. I just made a phrase. Maybe I subliminally heard. I was like, oh, shoot for a star, land on a
It's a famous.
It was basically what I was going to say. So.
But my point being, it can be good to aim for this really high level of DMing, but if you don't hit it, don't beat yourself up. At least you're still putting in that effort, and I'm sure your players are still having a fun time. But I've seen the problem be, the Matthew Mercer effect can be a problem as a player where you're like, my DM is not like Critical Role's DM, therefore I'm playing bad D&D.
So there's a few things I want to finish off with here.
Yeah.
And it's things that I have, for a while I had an issue with it. I stuck to the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual exclusively for the longest time, out of fear for ruining my player experience. Because ultimately, I think I enjoy being a player more because it's less stressful, and the reward is more immediate versus the DM is like you're in it for the long haul, and it's fulfilling and near the end.
Yeah, there's stuff that I've told my players like 2 years ago that are just now finally starting to pay off, and my God, it's painful.
Yep. So I very much enjoy being a player a lot, and I know for me how I am when I know things, it just lessens the experience a lot, as we've mentioned before. So it was until we did this podcast, and that's, I think, why the I don't read things shtick became a thing, is because I didn't want to spoil stuff.
It's like if you were to be a player in a what's the Ice of the Frost Maiden, Rime of the Frost Maiden?
Rime of the Frost Maiden.
If you were to be in one of the, because we dissected the hell out of that book. That was a long ass episode. What do you think you'd be able to have a good time?
I think because it's challenging, there's the difficulty there. I think so. Even there's times, even if you know the information, doing it and figuring it out is another. I would certainly have more fun if I didn't know it, but I think I would still want to jump in because there are portions of it that my brain didn't brush over because there's so much in that book.
Yeah, that's spoiling it. I mean, I think I would have 100% more fun if I didn't read it, because there's parts of that book where literally, I mean, it feels like two separate adventures tossed together. And if this was something sprung on me, there's this whole extra part of the campaign that we've not even gotten to explore yet. That'd be a fun little kind of what?
I think the best example, and it's always the example, is Skyrim.
Oh, brother.
Imagine your first playthrough of Skyrim. If you could see, like they did in Breath of the Wild with an update, where you've gone and a path of all of your life. You probably haven't seen it on the Switch update. So eventually on the little tablet link that Link has, you could see your journey. Look at your first journey and where you went and how sporadic it was. And you found one thing here and you were so intrigued that you didn't go this way, but you went that way, and it's all over the place. You go through your Skyrim playthrough once, twice, thrice, a billion times. At the last one that you've done, if you're like me, you know what you like so much. Every time you play Skyrim, no matter how much you tell yourself you're going to do it differently, you're going to go off and you're going to find that one Daedric Prince. And you're going to go join the Mages Guild first because that one's the most fun for you. And then you're going to remember that you want more XP. So you
never go to Whiterun.
I always go to Whiterun. I'm like, I'm going to start in a different place. And then eventually I always
And then the music from the Streets of Whiterun song kicks in.
You're like jamming out. And it's like, I don't know why I ever wanted to do anything different.
It actually would be super interesting to see like a graph or a live map of seeing where everyone goes when they start Skyrim, which direction people head off. I'm sure most people head to Whiterun.
You know they have that for these always live games, though.
Yes. It's like if you ever played like Super Meat Boy or some Mario games, after you die, after you finish a level, you can see all the paths and deaths you made. And that'd be so fascinating to watch.
That's a big reason these games are sometimes always online, and why you get asked, do you want to share your data with the developers? It's for that reason. But to my point, if you don't know Rime of the Frost Maiden, you're going to have that sporadic path. If you've DM'd it and you're now a player in it, you might, even just subconsciously, no matter how hard you try, always lean towards the better option. Or flip it over that. Maybe you're like Ryan and you choose the worst or the option that makes the most sense for your player. You still probably wouldn't have done that if you haven't read through before, because that informed your decision. It's like, it's one of those paradoxes, man. The quantum particle being observed changes the result, I suppose, or sets it into play. So that's like the final thing for me on this. Is just
being a DM. You can't ever separate it. Being a DM and being a player.
You can stop reading stuff. That's why third party shit is so great. There's no way you can read all of it.
True.
So
or just everything.
Yes. Oh yeah. Just if you have players that are all DMs, watch their face when they're like, I know this troll's got fire.
Yeah, change that.
Make it ice or something. Maybe you make a reason for it, but
don't make it like don't do it just to mess with them. At least have some way, like we mentioned before, have some way where they can figure this out without testing all their abilities first.
Yeah, so that's the solution to it. If you're playing with a bunch of experienced people, or maybe you jump in our Discord and you want to run a run shot. That's a tongue twister, dude. Run a one shot for the people in the Discord, which I would love to have people jump in and do that. Ryan and I and Kenneth, for sure, Kenneth, if he's in your one shot, you're going to need to change things around a little bit or make it on your own. I don't know. But if you jump in running a Curse of Strahd, we'll do our best to enjoy it and not metagame things, I suppose. Because breaking that DM player seal, opening the gates, it's forbidden knowledge, man.
We're not even
can't get rid of it.
I mean, now that you talk about it, like even playing through a module twice, it was your second time going through it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the nice thing about Curse of Strahd, it's called a module, but it's literally modular. It changes for every person that plays it. It's like, I mean, no, without spoiling, this happens very early on, is whenever you have your card reading, that changes where things are and what happens in your Curse of Strahd game. So it literally can be different. I
don't know everything.
The buildings are everything's for that matter is still the same location.
I
but
still remember that moment.
It's
been so long, but it was such an intense moment in the campaign. And I didn't know it was Curse of Strahd, so I thought Ryan had like put all this shit together. I'm like, what about my backstory is this right now? So Curse of Strahd.
The NPC does the card reading. Phenomenal. Love her.
Yeah.
She like knows everything about the players' backgrounds, and I love it.
What the hell?
Because she's a fortune teller. She knows what you guys have done. She knows your future.
Where's the Apple button where it says, "Do you want to share your information with this application?" I didn't get that before I walk in there or something. Come on, man.
You know, I don't understand how that works. Where like, let's say Braxton comes into my home.
I'm gonna do that tomorrow, maybe.
Comes into my home, and he has to have my Wi-Fi. He gets on his phone and tries to. It then asks me if I want to share him my password. Like, how does it know that I'm friends with him enough to give him my password?
I think it just does it anytime an iPhone is near you and joins your Wi-Fi. You just say yes or no, because your phone is on your Wi-Fi and it exists there. So they've created a feature that, hey, person who lives here, I assume, and is on the Wi-Fi and has the password, do you want to bequeath the password onto this new person right now or no?
Interesting. Well, you know.
Or maybe it doesn't know we're friends. Maybe it says, he's a cool guy. You gonna give him his password?
Oh, he's a cool guy too. Yeah.
Oh, that's awkward now. That's it. We did say that if we do topics like these that are more waffly, we're not going to try to ramble on for about an hour. And I think that's a good place to end it.
I agree. I think we've hit a nice little, I mean, we basically kind of said it's impossible to separate player and DM, but it can be beneficial. There are pros and cons on each side. Just play D&D. I think that's the main message of the day.
And my message was, I hate being on this podcast because it spoils everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. Because that Ravenloft book Ryan's going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're going to do that at some point.
What are we doing at some point? No, now I'm confused. I don't know what you're talking about.
What am I confused? What are you talking about? I'm talking about Ravenloft. What are you talking about?
Yeah, Ravenloft, everybody. So speaking of being spoiled, so next week, Ravenloft unfortunately comes out, as always, on the day of our podcast releases. So it's impossible, unless we time travel, it is humanly impossible for us to release an episode on Ravenloft on that day.
What time of day does it come out? If it's midnight, we could...
I actually don't know what time it comes out in D&D Beyond.
Actually, no, it would take me like 4 or 5 or 6 hours to go through and make notes. Yeah.
So until we become super big and the Wizards of the Coast sends us pre-release copies and like says, hey, check this out, like review copies, we have to wait another week. So next week, we're going to be talking about a class that will help you out a lot when you go down into your Ravenloft adventures.
Might I say the best class for Ravenloft?
The best class, he said it.
No,
but unfortunately, this will when Braxton and I go through it, will spoil him if I decide to use any of that in our games.
That is true, but if it's good, it's good.
True.
Ooh, I just saved y'all from hearing a really big burp.
I like putting my own spin on things anyway, so
yeah,
because their lore contradicts my lore sometimes, so I have to make it work.
It's been long enough since I mentioned this, but Kenneth would literally tell me about the Curse of Strahd game that he's running, and like, oh, that sounds really cool. That sounds really cool, dude. Oh, it sounds like a thing that I did in my campaign. And it was like 5 or 6 or 7 times. I remember this
conversation when you told me about this, yeah.
And you're like, wait, that's...
like,
is he doing Curse of Strahd? I was like, what do you mean?
We're doing that. We did that. You played through that. That was the vampire you fought.
So, kudos to you, dude. I'm either an idiot or you're really good at changing stuff. Or both. I don't know.
To be fair, I did cut out a lot. A lot.
Yeah, the Abbey is a big part for a lot of people. I don't know anything that happens in it.
Yes, but we cut out the Abbey. Again, I cut out a lot of stuff because of time. Because I knew there was a time we knew we had to finish this arc more or less because Braxton was going to be leaving for to study abroad. He was going to Japan.
How full circle we've come.
I know I was trying to get through this super quick, and so I cut out tons of stuff. But to be fair, I think it fit what we were doing anyway.
I just realized that was such an emotional experience for me because I was going off to Japan and then the semester after that we were graduating. So basically the stuff had to end.
Yeah.
And I moved to Chicago. Fast forward to where we are now. It's been like 2.5 years or however long. I'm back in Texas now. And if things go right within the next couple of months, I'll be back in Denton and maybe in a campaign of Curse of Strahd.
We're almost there.
Whoa. Dude. All right. Okay. Well, this has been fun. I'm starting to forget. We talk about social media, right? If you want to follow us there, I usually do clips. I think always. I don't think I've missed one for a while. I did kind of last week, I think. But I do a little snippet of the Dungeon Crawl here and the Dungeon Chronicles there, the day that the episodes usually come out on our social media. What is that? At Dungeon Crawl Pod for Twitter and Instagram. Twitter more so. Bum, bum, bum. If you want to find other places that you can view us, like YouTube, there's a video portion for this on the Dungeon Crawl Podcast YouTube channel. That's the easiest way to find it. We're getting better at the search engine optimization.
We are.
We'll be on your homepage at some point.
Watching the Illrigger episode.
Yeah, we had some nice comments there as well.
Popping off. And if you haven't watched it yet, go do it. Great episode.
Go do it. Maybe there's a little sneaky gift in there for somebody. Probably not. I don't know.
Maybe.
But if you want to find any of our other links, like our Twitch and whatnot, Dungeon Crawl Network, it's all in the link tree. If you want to jump in and join the community, because we're starting to make a lot of one-shots. There's another one happening in a couple of days for me. So I'm just doing a bunch of D&D. So if you want to play with us,
he's crazy.
Jump on in there. It's a fun time. Ryan.
Make sure you check out the Dungeon Chronicles as well. It's our live play podcast where Braxton's a DM, I'm a player, and our friends
for better or for worse,
Kenneth and Jamie are also players. It's a fun time.
It is a fun time. Next episode is on the 17th, which should be after this episode. It will.
Yes.
Yes. Anything else?
Yeah. So
I am expecting it this time. You can't get me.
I don't know what you're talking about. So the other day, right? That's how most of these.
That's how you get me. I'm like, oh, okay, story time.
The other day, I was actually playing in a D&D one shot. Braxton was there. It was a super fun time. We had a great time in this one shot. But it was weird because I was a player and normally I'm a DM. Really weird, crazy.
We should do an episode on that.
But I saw it was a really fun part of my abilities, and I actually worked with my DM together on this. And Braxton was actually pretty impressed when this happened. Whenever so
you literally already got me back. I don't know if this is real or not.
Whenever I take a reaction with my character, one of the reactions I can take is to quickly whip out an iPad and go to Apple Podcasts and rate the Dungeon Crawl 5 stars. And the DM then would come in, and he did a great job. Applause to him. Would then come in and would read the review that I would say, and it was completely improv off the cuff. It was really cool. But what we noticed at the end, after the reaction was over, combat finished, the iPad was still open, right? And guess what? The Dungeon Crawl podcast had risen up in the leaderboards. I mean, I don't know if the leaderboard's the right word, but like it was higher up for people to find us. And more people listen to Dungeon Crawl. Crazy experience. And I think if you out there, listener, watcher, if you do that as well, it'll also help us out. So we appreciate it.
I thought you were going to say, as a reaction, my other players could also make a review, because it's literally what the Real Rigger does. At least the
oh, yeah, yeah.
Pain,
I know what you're talking about.
Pain.
The first one.
Painkillers. Ibuprofen is the Illrigger class. I don't know.
Illrigger is pretty cool.
Illrigger is pretty cool. You know what else is pretty cool?
The end of the episode.
The end of the episode. He's been Ryan.
He's been Brax, and make sure you tune in next week. Gonna be a banger of an episode. And we might have a surprise for you next week.
What? Huh? Oh. What? Huh?
Braxton knows the surprise. He's just playing into the suspense.
There could be a couple of things, but I think it all points to something on Twitch.
Yeah, maybe. He's just whatever. Regardless, he's playing into the suspense.
No, I'm not. I have the question to ask you after this episode. As always, it's been the Dungeon Crawl. Thanks for calling with us.
Crawling, yeah.
Thanks for calling or listening. Don't crawl if your knees aren't covered.
And we'll see you next week.
Don't copy me.